And welcome, everybody. Welcome, especially Eugene, to our free-form discussion here. We'll be talking about whatever we like. Joining us a little late tonight, his time is Eugene, located in, can I divulge your location?
Yeah, I guess so.
Located in Minsk, Belarus, is Eugene Bagashov. How do you say your name in your native tongue?
Well, you see, we have two languages, Russian and Belarusian, and they sound different. So, which one do you like to hear?
So there's a different pronunciation in Russian and Belarusian.
Yes.
Huh. I don't know, whatever, both.
Well, in Russian, it's Evgeny Bagashov, and in Belarusian, it's Eugen Bagashov.
Ah, okay. All right. See, it's all starting to make sense now. Why names aren't pronounced the same way in any language is beyond me, but I think cities and countries, they should be pronounced the same in all languages, in my opinion. It's bizarre that we call it Cologne and in Germany they call it Köln. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's kind of funny.
It's as if
Um,
to confuse visitors as opposed to accommodate them.
Well, you should probably have a few cities in the US named Cologne, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you know,
And
it
maybe even Köln as well.
yeah, yeah, there's all kinds of versions of that. And actually where I live is actually extremely populated by Germans. I'm actually part German myself. And
Mhm.
for example, the city of Bethlehem is fairly famous because it has like a miniature version of the Christkindlmarkt, the one you'd find in Nuremberg and in the authentic Germany. And
Mhm.
it's the the main part of the city was built by a religious group called the Moravians, which were they're sort of like I guess they'd be like Protestant German Quakers, sort of like I don't know, but they were some great masons, and a lot of their masonry is still you can still visit it in what we call historic Bethlehem, which is only a few miles from here.
I don't know about religious group called Moravians. I know that Moravia is basically a part of Czech Republic,
Yeah,
basically a province like Bohemia and Moravia and whatnot.
so it's probably some sort of an more so like an Orthodox version. Maybe they are Catholic, but I want to say that they're Protestant for some reason. I really don't know. But if you've ever
Well,
seen a
the
Moravian
parts of
star,
Germany that are adjacent to Czech Republic, like the southeast, like Bayern,
Sonnenberg and so on, yeah,
Bavaria, they are actually Catholic, so it might be the case.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, Austria is Catholic, so which is roughly at the same place.
And a little background on me: I've actually been to Germany and Austria. Austria only a few feet into Austria, but I've actually been to Germany for about a week.
Mm.
I had what you'd call a very expensive date, I
So you
guess.
basically went there for some chick or something?
Yep, exactly. And then eventually,
Well, I know that feel, bro. I've done this myself.
yeah,
Uh,
well, and then a few months later, she came here for a while, and then things didn't work out very well. I don't think she was expecting the U.S. to be like it is. I I think she
well,
was.
mhm,
I think she'd spent too much time in tourist locations,
mhm,
and so she didn't
yeah.
really she didn't really understand what the U.S. is actually like. Also, she's what you'd call liberal from the perspective of compared to me. So she doesn't like things like guns, and she doesn't mind paying over 65% of her salary in taxes and things like this.
Cool.
Yeah, it's those were some of the issues. Uh,
I mean, seriously, like you broke up for political reasons?
that's part of it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's certainly, I mean, let's say different political views are often the consequence of different like character traits. So maybe that was the case.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, I'm not what you would call a conservative. I have, everybody wants to put me into a box, and in the US we have this extremely bizarre situation going on right now where on the internet, you're considered extreme right wing if you're right of Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we have 90% of the country's extreme right wing by those standards.
All right.
But there are a select few in positions of power, unfortunately. Google, Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, Apple. Geez, I've been doing too much mileage on the bike, Eugene. I seem to have developed a respiratory condition. I can assure you it's not COVID though. My immune system laughs at such pathetic little insects and stomps them out of existence.
Well, those names you call, they're basically branches of U.S. intelligence. So
Hey, that was just coughing, man. I don't know anything about anything like that. CI
yeah.
CI what? Alphabet soup is a Chef Boyardee recipe, man. Not that's not the man holding you down. That's anyway. So yeah, there everybody who everybody who wants to obey every ridiculous government mandate is now at odds with with like half of the country. So you've got and the COVID the spectrum of covidiacy is the weirdest part, Eugene. I don't know if you understand this or not, but we have a spectrum of covidiacy. So if you think about here's all the people right on the x-axis. Here's all the people. On this side, you have people who are very frightened and think that we should be locked down and masked forever, even after vaccinations. And on this side, you've got people who say viruses aren't even real. There's no danger to anybody ever. And then you've got people in the middle who are like, we need a balanced approach. Each one of these groups, if you plot your point at any point on this x-axis, you think that some other aspect of this graph is full of covidiots. So if you're in the middle, your graph is like this. You're like, everybody to my right and left are covidiots. But if you're over on this side of the graph, you're like, your graph slopes down like this very sharply because you're very scared. You think that everybody needs to be masked down forever so we can be safe, Eugene, forever and ever and ever and ever
Mm-hmm.
and ever and ever. And then the people on this side, their graph is like the same as the one on this side, but theirs slopes down like this because they think everybody that even believes a virus is real is a complete covidiot. And that's sort of the spectrum of covidiocy that's going on because large swaths of the people, no matter what part of the country you're in, so some states are still like partially locked down. And you, if I read the rules for what we're supposed to be doing in Pennsylvania right now, and most of these rules aren't followed, but the guidelines for what we're supposed to be doing right now regarding COVID, like whether it's like if you're riding a donkey, you have to wear a mask, but if you're riding a mule, a mask is optional, and you should wear two masks in a federal building. And if you're talking to Dr. Fauci, you should wear 14 masks because 14 is more effective than two. And it's like schools are saying now we're going to switch to 3 feet, but only from grade kindergarten to eighth grade. It's like what now you're only going to be 3 feet apart, and then it's insane. So what's it like in Minsk right now? Is it back to normal? Is it is everybody's like are half the people wearing masks in the store and like looking at the other half like it's West Side Story or something, or what's going on?
Mm. Well, we've had a mandate introduced a few months ago,
To drink
so
vodka and
they,
go to sauna, right? Vodka and sauna.
mm,
Everybody must vodka and sauna, and then
well, that's kind of is the usual practice anyway,
okay. So what are the
just even
mandates?
without COVID. So,
Yeah. So what are the
mm.
mandates?
Well, you have to wear a mask in public places, like
Okay.
anywhere in the shops, in like on the street, and in the public transport, places like that.
So it's like Pennsylvania, essentially.
So I guess so. I don't know what the regulations are,
Pretty much.
but
Pretty much.
the interesting thing is that technically there is no responsibility for not doing that. So
Okay.
there is no law that you can be fined for not wearing a mask or something. But again, with the state of the legal system we have here, I mean, anything is possible anyway. So uh, you could be literally killed by the on the street by the police, and like it would be okay.
They'd be like, he did something really bad, we assure you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's always nice. Here we have here we have similar amounts of crime and and police. Well, I guess the police really aren't quite so bad here. And we certainly don't have any sort of nationally oriented police in the U.S. at all. So, like for instance,
Mhm.
Pennsylvania is very strange because we have this governor called Tom Wolf, and he's in charge of the state troopers and the Pennsylvania National Guard, which is a very formidable military force in any theater. Uh, but you've got people in Pennsylvania that are like, when is the when is the National Guard going to throw Tom Wolf out of office? Because he's one of at least three different governors that have had these nursing policies that have cost tens of thousands of lives. New York, I think New Jersey had it, and Pennsylvania all had these insane nursing home policies where they were like
Mhm.
they were putting people that were had tested positive for COVID in the nursing homes, and the nursing home said, "Don't do that. When we get somebody that has symptoms, we have to send them to the hospital. So don't send them from the hospital to the nursing home." And the governors were like, "You must take those patients." Great idea. What could possibly go wrong?
You know, in my country, like during and after our protests, etc. So, what the police would do, they would actually, again, uh, put the infected people into, the cells with non-infected people deliberately.
Ah, that's
So it
very
was a
that's very
like
Soviet.
to punish, the people who are against the government.
Yeah, that's very Soviet, I think, right? That's
Yeah,
like I think Trotsky would perhaps be proud. Maybe he's smiling down upon their brilliant governance.
yeah, I guess so.
So hey, we're having a slam poetry contest in April on the YouTube channel. Perhaps you'd be interested in entering. The prize is vast. So,
I'm not sure I'm able to like rhyme anything on the fly, so to speak.
do you know what slam poetry is? Are you familiar with the genre? It's very
Well,
strange.
I guess I have a vague idea at the very least.
It's very strange. What it is it's in 1984 in Chicago, somebody made somebody in an effort to make poetry less stuffy and elitist, somebody decided to do it in public, open mic style, and make it into a competition where people do all kinds of silly and dramatic things to try to win. It's almost like a rap off or something like that. Uh, and
Hmm.
you have judges, and we're going to give away a free month of Patreon for we'll give somebody an intro $3 per month Patreon membership for the month of May. So we'll the whole
Cool.
the whole month of April we'll like screw around writing slam poetry and like encouraging people to like make ridiculous videos of them doing poetry, doing like silly things and so on. Because it should be kind of amusing. I'd never really even heard of it until Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Have you ever seen that show?
I've certainly heard about it, but is that where like, this Danny DeVito?
Yeah, Danny DeVito, he showed up at like season 3. The show was originally created by a guy called Rob McElhenney. He plays a character called Ronald McDonald on the show, and they just call him Mac, but his actual name's Ronald McDonald. And then you've got Dee, Charlie, and Dennis are the other three main characters. And then I think it's season 3, Danny DeVito shows up. So that's sort of the 5 regular cast members. There are a whole
Mhm.
bunch of other regularly appear like semi-regular cast members on the show. It's an interesting universe. and while it's filmed in Los Angeles, it does have footage, and there is lots of stuff from actually from Philly. And Rob McElhenney is really from Philly. Now I only live about 50 miles from there, and so it's just very accurate the way hipster douchebags behave. And but these people on the show, they're like such geeks that they're not even like proper hipster douchebags. They're just really douchey douchebags. They're completely out of touch with reality and nearly all possible. It's just great. It's like if the characters on Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm were cartoon characters of themselves. Have you seen Curb Your Enthusiasm? That's a good one. That's the only
No,
the only worthy sequel to Seinfeld, in my opinion.
I haven't even seen the Seinfeld, so I don't care.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I've probably seen every episode 8 times. It's just one
Okay.
it's just one of those shows that's always playing in syndication here. So after it went off the air, it just played and played and played, and Jerry got paid and paid and paid for just decades. It's probably playing right now. If I went through the channels, I could probably actually find it.
Hmm. Okay.
But Curb Your Enthusiasm's hilarious. That's an HBO show. It's much less censored, and it's written by the co-writer of Seinfeld, Larry David. He's part of the brains. He's Seinfeld was basically just written by Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. Anyway, so you want to talk about coronal holes momentarily? That may
Well, you wanted to talk about it, but I still have no idea. Like, what was your point? Like, what exactly you wanted to discuss?
geez, I don't know. We should just make a video specifically about it that's much shorter and visually amusing and more compact at a later time, rather than trying to screen share and just throw it together.
Yeah, but I still don't understand what specifically you wanted to address in this video.
Oh, nothing. It's basically just for viewers. It's not like either of us need to know what a coronal hole is.
Oh,
For
okay.
for you viewers who are now disappointed that we've decided to not talk about coronal holes are spots where there's not a lot of corona, not a lot of stuff in between you and the chromosphere, and those areas are sort of like cool spots, and we show them all the time on the channel. And they're also, from the sun's perspective, they're low pressure zones because there's protons blasting out of them all the time. And in fact, one is scheduled to be providing some geomagnetic storm conditions again. I think it's late tomorrow into Monday. There's like a
Yeah.
there's like a triple transequatorial South Pole one that's sort of rotating in now.
Hmm.
Little known fact,
Yeah.
little known fact, Eugene. Did you know that part of the reason why I became a solar forecaster is because of cycling?
I have no idea how it can be connected.
I started to try to forecast the weather, and there was a point where I was like, I don't know how sunny it's going to be today. That could actually affect whether or not we like reach dew point or not. And I realized that there may be something to this solar forecasting thing. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, that it's not really working that way. But seriously, though, solar forecasting was actually because I was like, well, I understand the physics of meteorology. I've got to do something more difficult, namely explaining the mechanism behind the solar sunspot cycle, I guess. That's that's coming, by the way. There's a paper coming.
From you?
Yeah. There's been an interesting article also recently about cosmology, Eugene. There's one about poloidal fields, actually. And what this one is saying is that apparently galactic scale jets, they seem to be they seem to be putting out a lot of material when the output is aligned with their poloidal magnetic fields, which
Hmm.
which to you probably isn't all that surprising, but apparently to mainstream astronomy this is some sort of a breakthrough. So,
Yeah. One interesting thing I've read in Perrat's book, I've recently posted the like synopsis of
Yeah,
it.
your cliff notes. Yeah.
Yeah. So one interesting thing I've read there was that I don't exactly remember what specifically he was addressing, but it was some sort of jet, like a very big jet. I'm not sure if it was like a galactic jet or just some random jet, right? That he was talking about. And he said that, well, it actually might not even be a jet in the first place. What we might observe is the synchrotron emission from electrons moving towards us. So it may actually be like a current sheet or something, like with electrons going towards you, and that's why it's so bright and like it looks like, a stream of some stuff.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So that's an interesting
Yeah, I
idea.
mean, I would think that the poloidal fields are probably ring shaped at the surface. So, like for example, when the sun's at solar minimum conditions, it has enduring coronal holes which remain at the poles.
Yes, but I don't think you understand what the term poloidal means. Basically, when we're describing like the spherical or cylindrical geometries of specifically of magnetic fields, then poloidal is like axial, basically direction, whereas toroidal is like tangential
No,
around the
oh no,
axis. So
I know exactly what that is. We've produced
yeah, so
entire videos just about the difference between toroidal
all
and
right, all
poloidal
right.
fields. So,
So I would guess
yeah.
that poloidal fields concerning the galaxy would mean the fields that go along the axis, whereas toroidal is around the axis. Would
Correct.
I
You
mean?
yeah, you're in line with the toroidal field where you are in the galaxy, the same way you are in line with the toroidal field in relation to the sun, for example. And the poloidal fields would emanate from the poles. They're probably cone shaped. They seem to be cone shaped. Another interesting thing about that, did you see the recent radio study of M87's jets?
No.
So
Um,
M87's jets are very interesting in that we see sections of them where the field lines are parallel with the jet, and other sections where the magnetic field lines are almost exactly perpendicular to the jet, and a few that are sort of mixed up, but
mhm,
significantly 90-degree angled portions of the jet's potential field surface source lines.
mhm. One thing I kind of forgot to mention with regards to galactic fields was that uh,
Oh no, not the galactic fields.
uh, it, it seems to be the case, at least according to again this Alfvén's model of galactic currents, that indeed there should be a current along the axis of the galaxy. So that previous comment that I made about Perat's idea may not be applicable to galactic jets, but maybe it is at least partially. Who knows?
I see what you're saying. So, but in any case, uh, what galaxies, I think we've discussed this before. Galaxies are fairly complex and they're not really structured like the solar system at all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
what's
mean, look, we can start even from the dynamical side. I mean, the stars in the galaxy don't really obey Newton's gravitation. I mean, hence dark matter, etc. So,
right?
I mean,
I'm
well,
not
you get the idea.
I'm not suggesting that you know stars are not interacting with each other. That would be a foolish idea. I think
Hmm.
stars interact with each other. Certainly, I mean, we see things like X-ray binaries and things like that. But even on larger scales, at greater distances, stars certainly interact with each other to some degree.
Yeah, but well, how exactly are they interacting? That's an interesting question.
Well, I think you would be the right guy to ask because I think these are like streams of particles. They're like particle. It's almost like they're firing a bunch of bullets at each other.
Yeah, well, I think it's like to talk about the interactions of stars is sort of a bad approach initially. I think we should start on the other end, so to speak. We should think about how these stars could have appeared in the first place. Again, assuming that the stars did appear, right? Because we can follow a cosmology where stars are eternal or
Assuming
whatnot,
that
but
they did appear, yeah.
assuming that they did appear, we should figure out how they did appear and why and where. And then through that, we can understand how they interact. Because, well, if you assume, as many people do, and I think it's a decent idea, that stars may form again along these large scale filaments of plasma,
Oh yeah,
then
they
probably
could.
probably these filaments of plasma is the place to go when we talk about the interaction of stars.
And now
But
we've come back to an important place where we were talking about coronal holes. And
yeah, but let me just add one
no,
simple thing.
by all means.
So unless I mean all of us said may be true, unless we may also assume, for example, that stars only appear when they sort of like detach from this filament. You see what I'm saying? So maybe they actually don't interact, and that's why they exist in the first place. So
I see what you're
it
saying.
is also a possibility.
A lot of arguments in physics are this sort of chicken or egg argument, and this is part of the issue that I've run into time and time again when I argue with people who try to say everything's electric. What it comes down to is, oh, and this is a problem that everybody has with their solar models. Well, almost everybody. It's that, hey, where do all those electrons come from? And you
Mm.
ask people that, and they get angry and they accuse you of not understanding plasma cosmology, and yet they can't explain where the mysterious electrons come from, Eugene. It's just, and that's what leads to a lot of the chicken or egg arguments, because it really does matter if you want to know how the things really work. It's kind of important. It's like when
Yeah.
somebody shows me a new
Mhm.
gadget. If when somebody shows me a new gadget, right? If it's based on some kind of science that I don't understand, I'll look at that gadget and go, "How in the world does it do that? Is it reading my mind? How does it work?" You know what I mean? Like it always works some way. I want to know the physics behind it. And so, you know, the stars are forming on the filaments, or are the filaments forming on the stars, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it
Well, I would guess that the first option would be more logical, but then again,
Yeah, and
what are we?
one of the things you see in Alphane's, I think it was Alphane's book, right, where plasma seems to travel through space like train cars. Was that Alphane, or was that I think that was Alphane. I can't remember,
Hmm.
but it was Alphane or Peratt. When plasma is traveling through space, it seems to behave like train cars, and the connections seem to be strings of electrons, and we see this coming out of the sun all the time. When we see a coronal hole wind stream, we typically see an electron storm after that if conditions are calm after that. So, if you go from quiet geomagnetic conditions, uh, where you just have just a normal range of electron flux throughout the day, and then you get a coronal hole wind stream, lasts maybe, I don't know, 36 hours. Usually within about 24 to 36 hours, you'll see another big uptick in the electron flux. And
Yeah, but this
once
is
again,
the electron flux from the magnetosphere. These are not the electrons from the solar wind, I would say so.
well, yeah, and that's another part of the physics and chicken or the egg argument, because we don't understand how the Van Allen belts are generated in the first place.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. That's actually one of the questions that Perag himself mentions. Like, he has a small chapter, like not even a chapter, but like a few paragraphs called like unsolved problems or something like that. And the issue of injection, let's say, of solar plasma or interplanetary plasma in general into the magnetosphere is one of those problems. Like we don't really understand how these polar cusps work and how the material is injected in the first place. And however, like in other places in his book, he says himself that it was actually a big surprise for the scientists to learn through measurement that the magnetospheric plasma is primarily actually comes from Earth. So the magnetosphere is populated by ions from Earth. It's not the solar wind in the first place. So who could have thought? And like, when people talk about the ions of oxygen and nitrogen, for example, oxygen specifically, I remember that, which are escaping from polar areas like auroral ovals, etc. So it all ends up in the magnetosphere
Yeah,
eventually.
we only see a little bit of it making all the way down to the ionosphere level where the GOES 16 makes its measurements around, like when you see a legit coronal mass ejection. That's the only time you'll see a spike in its proton flux. So,
Ghost 16 is actually at the how do you call it? Geostationary orbit. It's very, 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 very high up, uh, like 36,000 kilometers.
no, the GOES 16 measures at the ionosphere level.
Well, I mean,
300
it may measure it through some like indirect methods, like optically or something.
300 kilometers altitude, just above the inter
No,
70
no,
miles above the
goes like the letter G in goes means
geosync.
geostationary, I believe.
Yeah, it stands for
Yeah, but
geosynchronous.
geostationary orbit is 36,000 kilometers high.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
It's 1/10 of the way to the moon. It's
All right,
very, very high.
I'll have to look that up at a later time. I could have sworn the GOES 16 is measuring the F layer of the ionosphere.
It may measure it again through indirect methods like
Yeah, yeah,
optically.
yeah. Huh, that's yeah. I wonder how it does that. I have to look that up now.
Or I mean, through maybe, I don't know, like absorption of radio signal or something like that.
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah, it could be. But that's huh. You wouldn't want to measure the proton flux. I don't know. I'll have to look that up because that's
Ghost satellites have proton measurement devices and electron also, but
a GPS satellite's only at about 12,500 miles of altitude,
mm,
which
something
would
like
be
that.
which would be
Well, it's a bit closer to Earth than uh, geostationary ones, but it's still
but
very
that's
high.
yeah, that's nowhere near 300 kilometers. That's like
300 kilometers is not even a stable orbit in the first place, I believe. Like it's too low. I mean, it would decay in 1 year or
the
something.
the International Space Station's at what
440 or something.
230
Uh,
miles, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. 440 kilometers, right?
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that would be about 230 miles, right? Yeah, it's close to that. It's something like that. So yeah, I'll have to look that up because that's I want to see how it's doing that. That's pretty that's a strange thing. By the way, did you have you seen our daily space weather videos recently? We actually saw. I think we may have discovered a comet accidentally on the stereo A imagery. There's a there's an object that allegedly the stereo A website claims is Jupiter, but Jupiter's on the other side of the sun, and this object is moving right to left, and now it's changed its latitude of its path a little bit. And it actually looked like it got hit by yesterday's coronal mass ejection. That was the craziest part. It looked like it had a magnetosphere. And you viewers out there, check out our daily space weather supplemental video from yesterday. It's in our playlists. We did sort of close-ups of it. And yeah, it's at first I thought it could be something like that, but then it looked like it slowed down and sped up, and I didn't notice any lost data. So it's strange. And we actually sent an email to Stereo A and I forgot. I think it was the webmaster and to the person allegedly in charge of Stereo A's imagery. But we may have accidentally discovered a comet there. Shout out to Mandy Heslin, the viewer that argued about it, because I was looking at the diagram of the planets and I was like, Jupiter would be about there. I have to make like I have to make like a digital protractor that I can rotate around and just put on the diagram of the planet so I can see exactly where stereo A is pointing because
Hmm.
you know the planetary diagrams don't show you stereo A. So if you just if you take something and make it the right size, it'll give you the right. It'll be like a protractor.
Well, you can probably find its position accurately, and then like through JPL, NASA's JPL data, and then look at where Jupiter is. But then again, you need to know the field of view angle of the camera to figure out whether it's going to see it.
Yeah. So what I'm really wondering is if we just saw contrast effects that made it look like the plasma was actually hitting the object, but it looked like plasma hit the object and then it changed its path a little bit. Like it started to go south as if it had left the ecliptic. So that would have zero characteristics of Jupiter.
But anyway, this may have been some known object. It may have been a
Yeah,
comet or an asteroid or whatever.
yeah, it could have been.
Uh, like if you look at SOHO, I mean, stereo cameras, I think they're pretty low resolution with respect to SOHO, but there are so many comets discovered through SOHO coronagraph. There's like literally like 5,000 of them already.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we've covered probably dozens of them on our daily videos. Because I'm always looking at it. Whenever there's any kind of ejecta happening, I'm looking at that imagery each time it occurs. Maybe not every single time, but close to it. If it's not even close to Earth facing, I won't usually look at it too hard. But there was a big one, a pretty good one yesterday, though. You should check out the imagery. You want me to show you? I can bring it up on the
Well, you
ISWA.
may.
I'll bring it up on the ISWA. And by the way, while I'm messing around, everybody make sure you subscribe to Eugene the Philosopher. I highly recommend Methods of Theseus and Ulysses. That was one of my favorites. I think of all time of your videos.
That's the one with the worst audio of all, because I've accidentally screwed something up. I think I actually recorded the sound through my webcam because it was connected to the computer. So instead of from reading the audio from the microphone, it was reading it through the webcam, which
Oh
was like
yeah, I
very
remember that.
very far from me, and
Yeah, but it's pretty long. I mean, somebody can adjust their volume for that. It's not nobody's it's fine. It's
I
not
mean,
that big of a
I
deal.
tried to fix it as much as I could, but it still kind of sucks.
And viewers, by the way, I was telling Eugene about this earlier. I actually own a mix board. I just don't have everything hooked up right now because it's not really a priority. I have a mix board, so eventually the audio will be really good on these sort of calls, and we'll be able to take call-ins from viewers and stuff, just calling on a regular phone, which will route into my mix board and things. So here's what we're talking about, man. It's a little on the spectacular side. I mean, it's a decent coronal mass ejection, and what's interesting about it is that it geez, I wish I could go back farther. I got to go back another day. What's interesting about it is a lot of times when we see a coronal mass ejection, anyway, there you can see that object. And I'll tell you, there is a second one over here, which makes it seem more like a planet, but it looks like it's going from north to south to me. What do you think, Eugene?
Well, I can't see what you're showing, so I have no idea.
Oh, screen share is not turned on. Let me turn on screen share. Alt S, he says. There we go.
Oh, now I see it.
Okay, so
Okay.
so there's the object. One of our viewers claims stereo A says this is Jupiter. I couldn't find stereo A saying that.
The
It's
one on the left or on
yeah,
the right?
the one on the left, and it certainly looks like it's moving south a little bit. It looks like it actually crosses the ecliptic there. And if I bring it, let me bring up This one.
Well, Jupiter's orbit is inclined a little bit to ecliptic, right? So,
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it is, but I think every planet's slightly off. So, but
well, what you have to understand that stereo A and B, for that matter, are almost at the Earth's orbit in terms of distance, right?
yeah, almost
So,
exactly. Yeah.
yes, and the diameter of the sun, when you look at it from Earth, is 1/2 of degree. So
Yeah. So,
we're not talking about any sort of serious deviation. So
oh, that's true. This is way zoomed in. Yeah, you're right.
this might as well be Jupiter, as far as I'm concerned.
But why would it be moving? How could it be moving left to right on the imagery? That's what I don't understand.
That's because stereo A orbits the sun much faster than Jupiter.
So
So
it's a retrograde effect.
the satellite is going to the right with this field of view. It's going to the right, and thus Jupiter is going. Wait a minute. Can you play it again? I kind of. Yes, and Jupiter is going to the left in its orbit, right? But the satellite is much faster, therefore, Jupiter is also going to the right. Or does it make sense? I may actually screwed it up. Like, wait a minute.
No, it's pretty hard to understand. And let me just for the viewers here, let me go to theplanetstoday.com. I'll open this in a different window here.
No, I'm actually correct. Yes. Uh,
I just
for a
I just
moment,
want to
I
show the
thought that my explanation didn't make sense, but it actually did.
it's definitely very hard to visualize, and if you
Not
got it
that
wrong, I
hard,
don't blame you.
actually.
So viewers, stereo A is located about here,
Yes,
trailing the Earth as the Earth orbits in this direction.
yes,
And Jupiter orbits this direction, but very slowly.
yes.
So if stereo A is moving in this direction, Jupiter
Quicker
could be
and
appearing to move.
to the right. So,
Yeah, that's true.
yes,
So
that's
yeah,
what I
so
was saying.
it could be Jupiter. But the question is, man, is it whoops. I've lost control. There we go. I guess that must be just a contrast effect. I can accept that.
But which effect are you talking about? I don't see anything.
All right, hold on.
Well, I mean, I see the picture. I don't see any effects.
Well, if you look at that image right there, it almost looks like it has a magnetotail. See the way it's bright at the front and then there's like a halo behind it?
Yeah.
Well, if I bring it back a few frames,
Well, it still has the tail.
yeah, you're right. It doesn't really change very much. Maybe that's Jupiter's rings, Eugene.
No, they're much closer to the planet than this.
Ah, okay. Well, anyway, that's the object that we were looking at.
This may actually be satellites for what it's worth. I mean,
It may be satellites? Oh, Jupiter satellites?
Jupiter satellites. I mean, you can't even see them from Earth. So,
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, not like we can resolve them here, but they're adding a little bit of blur, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, I just figured I'd show that. Again, viewers, make sure you subscribe to Eugene's channel. And allow me to stop screen sharing. There we go. All right. So anyway, so what else is going on? What's new and exciting? What are you up to tomorrow? What's on your Sunday agenda?
not much so far. I'll figure it out when it comes.
All right, so
I mean, I just recorded a video. I'm going to. I've actually uploaded it already, but I need to review it to add the time codes, and then I'll post it like maybe in half an hour.
oh, all right, cool. And everybody, make sure you subscribe to Eugene. It is Eugene the Philosopher. And let's close things out. So thanks for tuning in, viewers. Thanks,
Yeah,
Eugene, especially for guest starring, for guest hosting.
yeah.
And
Well, thank you for inviting me and everyone for listening.
you're welcome. And we'll do it soon. I'll create some slides for a coronal hole video, and we'll do a brief video about coronal holes for the viewers. We're probably not going to learn much from it, but we've been promising that for quite a while, and because of problems with Skype, which we've worked around by using Facebook, actually, Facebook Messenger is what this call was recorded with, folks. So thanks again, Eugene, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank
And
you.
see you,
Bye.
viewers.